this video we're going to use gradients to make cylinder looking objects, spherical, metallic, tubular, and background looking objects. So for starters, we're going to start with cylinder looking objects. So we have a cylinder here. I'm going to click on it, use a linear gradient by clicking on the gradient tool over here, or you can click over here on the left. So I'm going to click over here on the right and use the linear gradient, and you can see that now this object looks like a cylinder, and the light is coming possibly from the back right here. And you can, to modify this gradient, you go over here to the gradient window and you can either move this diamond over, and you can see now it looks as if the light is coming in from the side. You can also change the colors here, so you can double click on this and it pulls up a color picker window, and you can either choose a lighter gray or any color that you like. Okay. And you can also change the position of these colors here, and maybe even add a third color. But to make a cylinder, you just use black and white, and then move the diamond accordingly. The next object we will make is a spherical looking object. So you make a circle, and then you can add a gradient here, and in this case I'm going to use a radial gradient. So now it actually looks spherical just by clicking on radial gradient, and it looks as if the light is coming directly from the viewer and shining onto the object. So, but typically you'd want the light source to be either to the top right or the top left. And to make that happen, you click over here to Edit Gradient, and that gives a more detailed tool for changing the position of the gradient. And so to move this gradient, you can click on this white bar here, and you can see that I'm moving the whole gradient. Okay, so I'm going to put it over here at the top right. Now you also notice that there's this dotted line that tells you the extent of the gradient. So beyond this dotted line is purely black, which is the color shown here on the right of this gradient scale. It's also the color shown here. So notice that this is the whole gradient scale shown here. So this diamond here corresponds to the diamond over here in this window. Now there's a lot of things you can do with this dotted circle. You can make it larger like that. We're going to keep it back down to the same radius as the original object, but you can enlarge it. You can also make it more elliptical. So that works, and so I'm going to return it back to spherical. And again, you can modify this gradient just like you can modify it over here. So that is a spherical looking object, and again you can change the colors to make this a red sphere, or green sphere, or blue sphere. So that looks like a sphere. So the next object we want to make is metallic looking. So I want this to look as if it's a metal object. To do that, I'm going to click on linear gradient, and typically metal objects will have the glare of the metal, or the shine of the metal, at an angle different than vertical. So it's usually probably like a 45-degree angle, so something like that, or maybe we can do 135. Let's see there. Okay. The other thing is there's usually very sharp lines that occur. So I'm going to drag this over here and then click another. So I just click just below this gradient to create another spot for color. And I can double click on that and then maybe click a gray like that. So now you can see that it looks metallic. And you can add even more bands in there, and really it's kind of difficult to mess this up, or it's difficult to get something that doesn't look all that great, because it doesn't, it's no matter how many bands you add, it's still going to look metallic, so so there I just added that same gradient to the overall object here, which that's not what I wanted to do. So anyways, yeah, so you can play around with this to get kind of the color you want. Now to delete this gradient slider, you just click and then you can either drag it away like that, or move it to the trash bin. Just click the trash bin here and it'll delete it. Okay. So that's metallic. And the next thing is a tubular looking structure. So I want to give this a 3D appearance over here. Now there's a new feature for the gradient that I think is really cool, and that's this freeform gradient. So I click on the freeform gradient and click lines. Okay. Now the lines will allow you to. So I'm gonna make this. Let's see, maybe. So I'm gonna click on the gradient, and I'm gonna click on this. Okay, and then I'm gonna click maybe something like this. Okay, and then I'm gonna click along this line. And so what I'm doing is I am clicking, so I click escape. I can start here, and then I'm going to click again, and notice how it connects a line here. Okay, and it makes it whatever color I had previously selected. So yeah, so now I want to make this part darker. So I'm gonna change this. So I double click on that circle to change it to the color I want. So that's good there. And I'm gonna go along this line, press escape. Okay, so now I want to create the white. So notice the default is white. So I'm gonna go along the lines here. Escape. I want this to be a gray. Okay, now I want white again. Escape. Okay, so now let's take a look at what we have. And it's not perfect, but it does certainly look tubular. I can click on it and then edit gradient. This needs to be here. And maybe add a lighter gray, and just play around with it. Obviously, if I spent more time on it, I can make it look exactly the way I want it. But you can get the idea that that it looks at least more tubular than it did before. Okay, the next thing is to use the gradient to make a really nice background. So I have this background here, and I want to make it look really nice. So I'm going to click over here to the freeform gradient, but this time I'm going to click points. Okay, and so I'm going to click over here, and maybe I'm just going to add any kind of color. So I'm going to add another point over here. This time, blue. And then another point over here. And I can add maybe an orange might be a little wild. There, something like that. And then I'm going to add another point here. And something like that. So this is really nice. I mean, the adding the different points, I think, creates a very unique, very smooth and nice background. So I really like that feature. And it doesn't really matter which colors you use, they almost all look good. I like that. So just in summary, we made a cylinder looking object using a linear gradient, a spherical looking object using a radial gradient, and then a metallic object using a linear gradient at a 45, and we kind of added some bands, some multiple bands in there to make it look metallic. And then a tubular object, we use this freeform gradient and then change it to linear, and then we clicked along the bottom rim to add the shading. And then the background, we used the freeform gradient over here, and then we clicked on the point gradient. So that are the different ways that you can apply gradients in Adobe Illustrator, and there are many more, but these are maybe some of the more main ways that you might use the gradient tool.